The Formula 1 series has gone from strength to strength with each year, from the work developer Codemasters puts into its sublime HDR and volumetric lights in 2018 and 2019 to the new team building career mode of F1 2020, there's always a forward step. What isn't so widely explained about 2020 though is the technical upgrades to the tracks, the cars and the Ego engine powering it all. What changes have been made to the visuals over the course of a year, and the performance on consoles? Well, it turns out the developers pushed itself to address some of the issues of 2019, while still vying for a photorealistic presentation. The good news is frame rates are without question boosted in this year's edition, but does that come at a cost? Let's dig in to find out. Let's jump straight to the resolution business. All of the pixel counts of last year are left as is, to be honest, though digging into the PC version shows how the options work on consoles. Xbox One, for example, is arguably the most fascinating, using a 1080p target but with heavy reconstruction to achieve it. As a result, you get these checkerboard artifacts on any movement. It's so easy to pick out in stills, though in fairness, those artifacts blend nicely with a temporal anti-aliasing pass that cleans it up in motion. The combination of checkerboarding and anti-aliasing is a big feature on PC, it must be said. A real performance saver if you need it, with dynamic resolution options opening up for it in a grade submenu too. It even lets you pick the frame rate target, 30, 60 and beyond, plus the aggressiveness of the scaling. Really impressive stuff, and I'd expect these settings are used behind the scenes on console. Now, it's a challenge to pinpoint the lowest res figure on Xbox One, but for context, PC lets you drop it to 50% scale for the target. That's an extreme measure, but would give the engine flexibility to adjust for 19 AI cars, heavy rain and complex tracks like Monaco. What's also clear is base Xbox One relies heavily on this reconstruction, more so than any other, whereas the other consoles like base PS4 here show barely any of those checker artifacts. PS4 pushes a 1080p target too, just like last year, but with far less visible noise around edges on motion, suggesting it hits 1080p natively more often. Otherwise, Xbox One X is, again, a 3840x2160 target image, with potentially a minimal use of reconstruction to get there, and likewise for PS4 Pro, the target is moved down a peg to a 3200x1800 target. No surprises there, the resolution setup stays much the same as 2019, but what's most curious is the visual tweaks. The optimizations made all round, even extending to the PC edition. Take the comparison on base Xbox One for a start, the worst performer last year and most in need of tweaks to boost its frame rate. Next to 2019, F1 2020 sees a slew of changes as we pan over the Monaco circuit. The trees are completely redesigned, something that even translates to PS4, Pro and Xbox One X, and even PC at max settings. It's a brand new asset that stays in place all through the on-track driving too. LODs are tweaked to the buildings in the far distance, while, curiously, the screen space reflection model is updated. From a distance here, the water body didn't show any reflections at all in 2019, but now it's all mirrored at range. 2020 uses a new setting which, all round, seems to reveal less temporal artifacting as the camera pans past. So, all good stuff. In a race, Xbox One and PS4's presentation of Monaco is updated with new shadow positions, trees, and potentially a change in resolution thresholds to help smooth performance. As for the other tracks, the assets are less widely updated, but still touched upon. Foliage changes are in place, while bizarrely, the intensity of those volumetric lights is dialed back a little bit for night racing, just in brightness. The result is a game that largely retains the look of 2019, but with clear optimizations under the hood to improve the way it scales to less powerful machines. Thankfully, this doesn't involve a drop in AI cars to suit the CPU limits of those base machines. The changes are subtle, purely visual, and have an impact on performance. So, what's the knock-on effect to frame rate? Let's backtrack to F1 2019 for a moment. Here we have all 19 cars on the Monaco circuit and clear weather on base Xbox One. You get clear drops into the 50s with high levels of screen tear up and down the frame. From the starting grid onwards, it's a familiar sight on most tracks, to be honest. Any view of lots of buildings tended to flare up these drops, and honestly, it gets in the way of an experience where every small nudge of the wheel matters. Likewise for other circuits, adding heavy rain into the mix does it no favours. 2019 could really struggle on that regular Xbox One especially, and even Pro. The 2020 edition then, with the fixes we've shown, goes some way to address all of this, as you can see here. Certainly, it's not perfect and there are still dips into the high 50s, but there's a tangible boost as we turn this first corner on Monaco. Tearing is less abundant, and as far as the base consoles go, it's great to see Codemasters put the time into fine-tuning the engine. It's not a uniform upgrade across the game, and the starting grid is still a trouble spot, but yes, it's still an improvement. And likewise, I've played the regular PS4 version extensively now. It's a 60 FPS lock for a majority of play. That's also despite, generally speaking, running at a higher resolution with less reliance on reconstruction, making it a win-win. For the clearer game with more consistent performance, PS4 is still the clear pick, but the gap, it must be said, has narrowed at least for this release. It's all positive for the base machines, whereas the enhanced consoles generally stay as they were in the frame rate stakes. 60 FPS was easily achieved on both PS4 Pro and Xbox One X last year, with a few exceptions on Pro involving that heavy rain setting. Looking at these points in F1 2020, there's barely a single drop under that number now. In cases where it does, the screen tearing kicks in to avoid noticeable hits. All round, these two versions were the least in need of improvement, though it's curious to see that the tweaked foliage of the base machines is kept. For the most watertight experience, I'd still back the X version for its avoidance of any drops in the face of too many cars, but you can't really go too far wrong with either. There are plenty of other benefits to playing on Pro or X. A direct comparison between Xbox One consoles bears this out as usual, being the two extremes of the console power spectrum. Though it's worth stressing, PS4 Pro gets all the same visual features you see here on X on the right here. You'll enjoy higher resolution textures on par with PC's top preset. There's better drawn shadows, plus road markings, which makes sense given the higher resolution window reveals a lot in the distance. On top of that, there's fuller plant life on the roadsides of tracks like Zandvoort, a small embellishment that bulks them out with more leaves. But honestly, all of this tends to just whip by during a race. It's only during those intro flybys that any of these details hold muster. Bizarrely, shadows do appear more diffused on X, softer at least at range. Still, the biggest divide during a race remains the resolution side. A 1080p picture achieved through checkerboarding on left versus a 4K target on right. In practice, Xbox One X does come close to achieving the max settings of PC. I have just a quick side-by-side to show the basics. PC has the clear advantage in shadow quality with more defined edges on global shadows. There's also the bonus of full environmental reflections on water bodies, as seen on the Monaco track. Note how the buildings get reflected alongside the boats here. Otherwise, well, PC's suite of settings, all maxed out with HBAO and TAA enabled, gives a fair approximation of what you get on the enhanced Xbox. It's really down to the PC-centric options like 120 or 144Hz refreshes, ultra-wide support, or over 4K resolutions that give it an edge. That is assuming you've got that horsepower to push it. The technical evolution of the F1 series is a steady one, but shows Codemasters is still committed to giving current gen machines a priority. This series is now better performing than ever before, which is the most important part of any racing package, and great news, especially for base PS4 and Xbox One owners. There's no sign just yet of where the team is intending to go for that next gen release though, or even the ambition for a patch for this game once PS5 arrives. SSRT shadows return on PC this year, for example, which essentially adds shadows to screen space reflections on car bodies. It's a performance taxing setting and doesn't really show up too much in practice, but the natural point to migrate to is of course full ray trace reflections for near field objects. What's planned for the next gen Eco engine is still up in the air. We've seen impressive early signs of ray tracing from the likes of Gran Turismo 7, while still keeping 4K and 60 FPS. So it'd be great to see another major franchise attempt to follow suit. A positive turnout for F1 2020, but that's all I have time for today. Just a quick look, but hopefully you found it useful. If you did, feel free to like or subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to hit that bell to get notifications as any new video lands. To get a high quality version of this video, check out our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, and to get in touch with me or the team, just use Twitter as usual. But from me for now, thanks for watching.